And sadly, on the back of these events, I need to return to the topic of anti-Semitism and the insidious attempts to downplay it or even deny it as a problem here in Australia. Such efforts are not only damaging and hurtful to the Jewish community and therefore divisive, they're also plain wrong and show utter contempt for the facts. For instance, the Adass synagogue was firebombed in Melbourne just last December, destroyed in a deliberate arson attack, but thankfully did not take any lives. But certainly this attack harmed and terrified a whole community. Opposition leader Peter Dutton visited the site again yesterday and pledged $35 million to rebuild the synagogue if elected, a pledge that was matched today by the Prime Minister. But this issue is much more widespread than one synagogue, of course. The wave of anti-Semitism that's seen thousands of direct threats against Jewish people and organisations has unfolded over the past year and a half. It's seen dozens of cases of abusive and threatening graffiti attacks, cars vandalised and firebombed, and even a childcare centre set alight. And then there was, of course, the caravan of explosives episode, described as a fabricated plot by police, but designed to generate real fear about a mass casualty attack against Jewish targets. Now, I showed you last night how even given police believe no bombing attack was planned, I reckon the New South Wales police have been too quick to declare there was no ideological motivation behind this plot. Clearly, something can have a criminal intent and involve anti-Semitism. Individuals can have dual motivations. Police arrested and charged former Nomads bikie gang president Sayed Mohammed Musawi, and they say the mastermind was former Sydney fugitive Sayed Erhan Akka, last seen in Turkey. In the past, Akka has said that Hitler was only washing earth. They made him out to be evil, and he questioned the extent of the Holocaust, and he reacted to swastikas that were painted on cars with a post that said Zig Heil. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, in any of this that should reassure Jewish Australians or the rest of us worried about anti-Semitism, social division and or terrorism. Yet we get clowns like this YouTuber, Jordan Shanks Markovina, using the latest developments to shame our own Shari Markson on racial or religious grounds or over perceived divided loyalties.
But guess what? Australia has interests independent to Israel. That's why I harbour so much resentment for dullards like Shari using her mainstream platform to import her narrow ethnic interests into Australian mainstream consciousness.
What clueless and gutless attack there from this YouTuber. Classic victim blaming from a bully who pretends that anti-Semitism is a beat-up.
For about 2 years now, you've been hearing non-stop about the anti-Semitism crisis in Australia. And I just have to say it. It really feels astroturfed. Like, it wasn't a thing. No more than any other racial prejudice in Australian society, until the media collectively wished it into existence as a nice little palate cleanser for every so often being forced to cover what's happening in Gaza, I guess.
Yeah, a horrible hatred responsible for some of history's most shameful atrocities that creates bloodshed and trauma to this day. And this YouTuber wants to pretend it away as a means of poking fun at his media or perceived ideological enemies, or perhaps it's his way of winning popularity with kids. I don't know. Shanks Markovina in this video equates fighting for Hamas with fighting for the Israeli military. In other words, he equates people joining terrorist organisations to slaughter innocents with those who serve in Israel's army to defend people from terrorist attacks. It's truly reprehensible, and he dismisses real trauma, real hatred as media game playing.
If those incidents weren't made national news every day, do you think that they would have their intended effect of undermining social cohesion? Like, listen to this.
While we're on the topic of anti-Semitism, Sydney University and its handling of Jew hatred and anti-Israel protests on campus has been one of the biggest stories of the year.
One of the biggest stories of the year? Only it's because you creeps decided it was.
Shocking, puerile stuff, isn't it? Sadly, pumped out on social media to a lot of impressionable kids. But what's really worrying is that the National Broadcaster's Media Watch program last night attempted to go down a similar path, targeting media for whipping up the anti-Semitism threat.
But as we now know, the whole thing was a sham, a terrible stitch-up allegedly orchestrated by organised crime figures.
The caravan was part of a fabricated terrorist plot, essentially a criminal con job.
So tonight, we're going to walk back through these 6 weeks and take a cold look at the role the media played in the fiasco.
Well, they did all that ad nauseum in a pretty boring program, and the point is they found no evidence of media malfeasance.
Rather, these fevered few weeks were a perfect example of a perfect storm. Police reluctant to rule out terrorism, politicians afraid to be on the wrong side of history, and the media, which, faithfully reporting the advice of authorities, could only go as big as it did, even if it failed to give quite enough attention to the nuance, that small grit of doubt which had been identified from the very beginning by the Daily Telegraph, and which was, in the end, drowned out by the noise of fear and panic.
So, a waste of time? Why do it? Why talk about the noise of fear and panic as if it's not real? Because they want to diminish anti-Semitism or gaslight the Australian Jewish community? Anyone not taking the threats of anti-Semitism and terrorism seriously in this country right now is indulging in a very dangerous delusion. And the ABC should be better than that.